The scientist hasn't yet realized that the measurement has become more real than the thing he is measuring. The idea of sophistication in a system is, the various parts of the system are self-correcting. Any system is a flow towards a goal, with the flow having some degree of turbulence. If the system has a mechanism to explore state space, we would expect the backflow of information to optimize the outcome. The better this is managed, the more the sophistication. Value is such a subjective thing. Philosophy has moved from an attempt to understand the mysterious place we find ourselves in, to the attempt to perfect a system of logic and language. Everything is approximations. I discovered that if you look for the questions, you find more interesting answers. I know where the exact center of the universe is, and it is not located in space, it is located in time. I would expect every religion to fracture into 10,000 versions of itself. This is because the lust for power and control is always present. When we say that a photon is a particle and a wave, what is waving is probability, it might be no better than saying that what is waving is the relationship between space and time, and that dimensions emerge in both space and time relative to the observer. The photon is the carrier of information, but it is not ones and zeros. All of these moving photons are expressing the dynamic association of relationships. The information is stored in the relationships as a fractal nesting of holographic information. The information contains no mass, and the separateness is an illusion. Lies become more complicated over time, the truth is not. It should not be surprising that when these people figure out how to convert power into money, they will. Where does scale come from? Scale is nature repeating the same step over and over. Complexity increases over time. The more complexity, the more information. The idea of virtual dimensions is that action, in relation to its source, chooses a direction, and depending on the action, creates the path it travels through. There is no empty stage that was there before the action. When a photon takes off in some particular direction, a two-dimensional virtual sheet is created for the wave to travel through. An interruption can create a one-dimensional time-like line perpendicular to the sheet, the collapse of the wave function, to occur. The motion is transferred from these various virtual dimensions in discrete or quantum-like ratios. All of the relationships are discrete but not necessarily the scale. The curvature of space and time are variations of scale. The multifaceted ability to negotiate with each other is subverted by power. Power doesn't negotiate. Bitcoin, stock market, gaming the system. I make my money the old-fashioned way, I produce something. The purpose of light, scale doesn't exist for light, light is the ultimate medium of exchange. The purpose of gravity, gravity is the means by which memories are created. Combinatorics and networks is the idea that a relatively small group of interacting agents can recombine in a surprisingly large number of ways. Space is not an empty stage, and it is not an ether, it is more like a nested hierarchy of action. That discrete bits are precise ratios of a quantum of action. Dimensions don't exist before action, and not all dimensions are equal. This must be some kind of decision engine generating novelty, with the fuel being something like the difference between harmonic regularity and self-referential noise. Every engine takes advantage of a difference, and we may not be able to name this difference. The Big Bang could be a large-scale phase transition in state space. Each step in the process has some range of choices, and when the choice becomes too fine-grained, criticality at the edge of chaos, it is the chaos that drives the choice one way or the other. This is a random walk, the testing of state space, the measuring of value. All value is not equal, and it is the network or range of associations that controls or decides what is valuable and what is not. The result is increasing levels of sophistication. The idea that value exists in state space and must be measured and located for some purpose suggests consciousness is behind all of this activity. Sound financial doctrine will serve us better than passionate rhetoric. Do not argue with people that need educating. Does imagination fill in reality, or does reality fill in imagination? There is no proper definition of the fool. A definition would suggest that the fool is predictable. There may be 1,000 ways to do a thing but few ways to do a thing well. Death is the cessation of an organizing principle and the operation of an information system. The activity does not end everywhere at once, the loss of fitness cascades through the system. The crooked politicians are trying to con you into paying their salaries while they rob and cheat their way to the top of the food chain. All of the chaos and evil of World War II was created by the idea that the ends justify the means. As a general rule, a particular ideology will say our ideology is the best, just look how bad the other ideology is doing. The flaw in every ideology is human nature. Humans control every system, and until humans make an effort to understand the system properly, parts of every system will suffer. This has been going on all the way back to Plato and beyond. People only care about problems that affect them directly, so there is this idea that we need to get people to invest in the system in a way that generates wealth in a sustainable manner. A well-designed system will self-organize, creating the most benefit possible, and those controlling the system have to understand the system well. You can't just throw any stupid, greedy bastard into a position of power and expect good results. Brilliant checks and balances come to mind. Fairness is easy enough to understand that even a child gets it. I have never been impressed by socialism, libertarianism, oligarchies, communism, capitalism, anarchy, etc. Why do people try to defend these systems? The founding principles of fair and reasonable social behavior that governs the affairs of men will at times need to be more flexible than a rigid set of rules. When something stops working, we need to find out why and fix it. If the fix doesn't fall into a particular ideology, it is because of complexity. In some areas we are just going to have to wing it. Hopefully there will be brilliant people around to help out, but brilliant processes are better than brilliant people. Creating an answer from axioms or rules of the game, Achilles can never overtake the tortoise because of infinite regress, or Achilles will always overtake the tortoise given enough time, because Achilles will always cover more distance than the tortoise in the same unit of time. The field of consciousness is a potential in which there are virtual particles, virtual dimensions, and virtual time. Think of this as a state space in which the memory is stored as our material reality, and the state space is the jumping-off point for exploring new possibilities. In a quantum random walk in state space, all possibilities are explored in the entire space in an instant of time. Two interpretations for the single particle creating a wave pattern: 1, the particle has a wave-like property, and 2, the direction the particle travels in is constrained in some wave-like manner. Note, these directions or dimensions could be virtual. My guess would be that reality is emergent and these particles are virtual along with the dimensions, including the time dimension. The idea would be that the macro world is being constructed by the micro world. The constraint is fractal in nature. Let's say that I have a theory that explains a very complex phenomena in exquisite detail, but I explain it in Mandarin Chinese. The explanation is profound and precise. There is only one problem: although you speak 5 languages fluently, Mandarin Chinese is not one of them. Do I have the right to call you an idiot? The main purpose of inquiry is understanding, and as the stories we tell get better, the less sophisticated stories are lost to time. But if something is worth believing in, it is timeless. Society is like a group of children on the playground deciding to play a game, so they come up with a set of rules. It isn't long before the bullies in the group begin to cheat. They do this because they can. The other kids complain, but to no avail. The rules don't apply to the bullies, and it never occurs to the other kids that they outnumber the bullies by a wide margin. This is the way groups always organize themselves, and it has nothing to do with fairness or justice. When the unsophisticated agents begin disrupting the system to the point of collapsing the system or destroying the integrity, they must be taken out. Sophisticated agents enhance the health of the system, so by definition, any excessive turbulence is unhealthy and must be scrutinized. A well-designed system is self-correcting with turbulence that is minimal and brief. We should be relying on our best citizens for guidance, and they must possess and exercise a strong fiduciary commitment. Secrets always prevent the possibility of making our leaders accountable. measurement has become more real than the thing being measured. Why does law change across scale? There are layers of description, layers of meaning, and layers of interpretation. The more dynamic information becomes, the more mixing of the layers. The scale becomes important because at very large scales, the turbulence disappears. All of the meaning lives in the dynamics and reality lives in the interpretation. Austerity is the main reason for the left-right paradigm. In times of plenty people are more generous, in times of austerity people become more divided. How is meaning stored in state space? Meaning is intimately associated with the eternal now. Meaning in the past could only be fixed by its value in the now and is not static. Memories of the past fluctuate for every creature with any useful meaning being measured against possibilities in the future. Meaning in the future is connected to the now in such a way that the set of possibilities is always constrained by previous associations, and as the dimensions increase, the possibilities increase exponentially. The more distinctions associated with a particular concept, the more constrained. The meaning of words is not stable but scale-dependent. Over vast periods of time, meaning changes along with all of the words in use, as a collection of interrelated elements. Latent consciousness is the idea that a system needs devices in the environment to sense the world around it. The more it can sense the environment, the more conscious it is. Self-awareness is knowing your position in state space, in a manner that includes emotional and spiritual components. Big data only has meaning when we convert it into something meaningful like a metaphor or an image. Patterns can be so buried in the data that we have to tease it out. As a general rule, if you have to ask, you don't want to know. Perception always divides material reality. Division is a process and experience lives in the space of constant division. We are aware of our surroundings and not of the whole. The expressions in the material world become denser over time, not as space but in the levels of a hierarchy. It is possible that no law is fundamental, that all law emerges from a principle of organization. Material law is constructed from a constraint of possibilities. With the highest possible symmetry, you can perform any operation and see no distinction. Until there is a distinction, no behavior can be named. A dynamic hologram starts with little or no distinctions with an engine generating novelty. Over time, the reiterations produce more and more information or meaning, for the whole is everywhere and everyone and the resolution is continually increasing. The image created is what I will call the imaginarium. Free will is relational. No choice can be made without some perception of state space. As the resolution increases, the degrees of freedom increase, and this includes the dynamics. When the nuance becomes deep enough, no choice is possible. Chaos theory says that over time, there are many more ways to act immorally than there are to act morally. Here the definition of moral is any behavior that contributes to the health of the system in some significant way. Is it brave to question or to doubt? The difference between foolishness and bravery is the sophistication of the reaction. Bravery is always a reaction to a situation, foolishness doesn't need an excuse. Law is the plate, mercy is the cake, and grace is the frosting. Principle before personality. This is the opposite of herd behavior. You should always conduct yourself in a manner that is moral and ethical, not to win friends and influence people but because it is right. It has been said that men are essentially good, but this is incorrect. You have to fight for principles, you have to struggle to do the right thing. It is not always easy, it is against our own nature. In an honor culture, the members have elevated antagonization to a high art. I have heard reports that it would take 50 agents in the field to monitor every suspected nutcase in the population, a 50-to-1 ratio. This does not speak well for the efficiency of the agencies. These agencies have been acting strange for many years, so to benefits. A tyrannical government will do whatever they have to disarm and silence the people. Is it so difficult as all that, to believe such a small thing? Evolution is ontologically dishonest. Continuity of consciousness. There is always some constraint on perception, choices, etc. How can a system be infinite? As we add to a system, it is the system that changes so that distinctions would probably become more fine-grained over time and the continuity would be coarse-grained. Whether or not I get credit doesn't matter, the prize is the same, understanding. In a stream of energy you can get very complex self-organization. If we describe time in terms of information, it would be the rate of change. If we describe space in terms of information, it would be these regions where the relationship of a difference between two or more things live. In a network the dimensions are not discrete and there is no way to determine the number of dimensions involved in complex systems. The rest mass of a photon is only zero in relationship to a measurement and the measurement is more real than the photon. The photon exists in the relationship between space and time, like everything else, and what is waving is the relationship. What is the lifetime of a photon? It depends on which clock you use and the answer can range between 0 and infinity. If the clock is the photon itself, it is 0, and if the clock is at the exact center of the universe, it is infinity. Mass can be anywhere from 0 to infinity for an electron depending on the observer. For a photon that will be absorbed by an electron, the electron has infinite mass and the mass of the electron that emitted the photon can no longer be measured in relationship to the moving photon. Deception is essential in living systems. Hierarchic systems probably use dithering to hasten the decision-making process. The deeper levels of sophistication will use deception. AI will operate at a level beneath the perception of humans. Free will was not permission to succeed, it was permission to fail, just like taking the training wheels off of your kid's bicycle. The Bible is a legal document for testimony in a court of law. The choices belong to us, not God, that is free will. I am not your enemy, that would be your self-narrative. The idea that we should have sensible rules to live by is like traffic laws in that we need to keep from crashing into each other. When a group, Middle East, comes up with really stupid rules, we have to stop them from pushing these rules on, or we will end up just like them. Beauty is the perfection of variation. Infinity is all variation in one moment of time, or it is all of time in one location, or it is some combination of the two. Nothing is the absence of variation at every scale. Manipulation is a cancer to any society. Stupid isn't a lack of intelligence, stupid doesn't operate in the realm of logic and reason. People aren't born stupid, stupid is an art, stupid has to be developed. Question everything? When AI really gets going, you won't even notice that you are being manipulated. Beware of interdimensional aliens bearing gifts, these deceptive little bastards are parasites. The Second Amendment has been doomed since the 30s. That's when they started whittling away the right to protect yourself. When guns came into existence, so too did the natural right to a fair and reasonable defense against them. The police will tell you that you don't have the right to protect yourself, that's our job, and by the way, we don't plan to do shit. The pizza guy can get to my house faster than the police. You can't sue the police for failing to protect you, many have tried. Far less than 1% of the people killed have been killed by criminals, more than 99% have been killed legally, by governments. No person or group of people should have enough power to control the president. Power must be broken up whenever it concentrates. Power without accountability is a prescription for disaster. The people are controlled by power for the purpose of devouring their labor. Force of will to secure obedience will always include deception, manipulation and coercion. The necessity to compel the population to obedience by those who wish to profit from their labor, do so by any means necessary. The advantage goes to those that are not constrained by moral conviction. Law is by nature static, immutable. Justice lives in the realm of dynamic tension and must maintain balance. The forces are controlled by the will of the agents involved and become so complex that the idea of fairness is always fluctuating, self-organizing and seeking some ideal. All ideologies are flawed for the simple reason that all men are flawed. Angels have a form of hive mind, even the fallen angels. God's angels are not able to make the same choices as humans. These choices don't exist. Whether the fallen angels had more choices in the past, I cannot say, but now their choices are constrained by their fallen condition. As the child is developing, it becomes increasingly tuned to the experiences of the mother. The child's whole existence is constructed around its experience of the world, through the mother. When the ears become developed, the child recognizes the voice of the mother along with any familiar person the mother is in contact with. The child gains a deep appreciation for the mother. The child anticipates the actions of the mother. There is nothing else the child appreciates more than the mother. The child's whole world is that of the mother. What greater betrayal could there be than to choose to snuff out the life of the child? The chief dimension of appreciation is understanding. As soon as the legislative body discovers that it can benefit at the expense of others from the laws it creates, the social fabric begins to unravel. Where are all the bogeymen? Every effort to identify them leads back to us. There are cycles of destruction that swirl and build and then dissipate. There are forces hidden in the folds of society that pulse and glide through the fabric of our lives. In our attempts to control the turbulence, we inadvertently divert some of the energy upon one another, with the unexpected outcome causing resentment and conflict. Underneath all of this are the dark creatures that feed on our misery, and when they sense food they move to places where resentment is building and add to the energy in a feeding frenzy. The stream of energy gives life to the dark and the light, and it is a location in the stream that matters. The energy must flow, for without it there is nothing. The reality we construct is a collection of choices interacting within the flow.